Imagine a valley, somewhere remote, maybe in the Altai Mountains of Siberia, a place where glaciers retreat slowly. A place people rarely go. A team of scientists is there studying ice cores. They are not looking for anything alive. They are looking for history trapped in ice. One day, they see smoke. Not from a campfire, it's too steady, too deliberate. They follow it, they move through a tight pass, one they hadn't seen on any map. And the valley opens up. It's small, sheltered, almost completely enclosed by sheer rock walls. A lost world. And in that world, they see them. A small group, maybe 10 or 12 individuals. They are short, but incredibly broad. Their chests are like barrels. They have sloping foreheads and large noses. They move with a powerful, deliberate gait. They are a family. They are Neanderthals. The first moments would be pure shock, disbelief. The scientists would hide, watching, trying to process what they are seeing. These aren't modern humans with unusual features. These are living fossils, a species we thought vanished 40,000 years ago. The world outside this valley thinks they are extinct. But they are here, hunting, talking, living. This discovery wouldn't just be a headline. It would change everything we think we know about ourselves. It would be the most profound scientific and ethical event in human history. First, the science. The immediate impulse would be to study them. This impulse would be overwhelming. For decades, we've pieced together the Neanderthal story from fragments. A piece of a skull here, a finger bone there. We've sequenced their ancient DNA, which was a miracle of science in itself. But it's like trying to understand a car by looking at a few rusty parts and a blurry photograph of the engine. Now, we have the whole car, and it's running. The biological questions would be endless. We could see a living Neanderthal genome in action. Not a reconstruction, but the real thing. We could see which genes are turned on and off. We could finally understand their immune system. We know that many modern humans carry Neanderthal DNA that affects our immunity. Seeing their system work would explain so much about our own. Why do some of us have allergies? Why are some of us more susceptible to certain viruses? The answers could be walking around in that valley. We could study their metabolism. How did they survive the Ice Age? They were built for the cold, but how exactly? How efficient were their bodies at turning food into heat? This isn't just an academic question. It could have huge implications for modern medicine, for treating metabolic disorders, and their physical strength. From their bones, we know they were powerful, but how powerful? We could see them move, hunt, and work. We could understand the biomechanics of a different kind of human body. A body that evolved on a parallel track to our own. Then there is the brain. This is the big one. We know their skulls held brains as large as ours, or even larger. But the shape was different. Their brains were longer, lower. Ours are more rounded, more globular. That difference in shape almost certainly means a difference in wiring, a different way of thinking. Could they talk? This has been a huge debate. Their bone structure suggests they had the physical capacity for speech. But did they? And if they did, what was their language like? Was it as complex as ours? Did it have grammar, tense? Could they talk about the past and the future? Could they tell stories? To hear a Neanderthal speak would be to hear a voice from another world, a different kind of human mind, given sound. We could learn how they see the world. Do they have a concept of gods, of an afterlife? Do they make art? Do they sing? We found hints of these things in caves. A flute made of bone, pigments used for paint. But here we would have living proof. We would see their culture not as a collection of artifacts, but as a living, breathing thing. We could see how they think. How do they solve problems? Are they more visual thinkers? It's more intuitive. We could give them a puzzle and just watch. The results would tell us more about the nature of intelligence than any brain scan ever could. We assume our way of thinking, our Homo sapiens way, is the only way, or at least the best way. The discovery of a living Neanderthal mind would challenge that completely. It would be like discovering a new primary color, a new way for consciousness to exist. The scientific gold rush would be immediate. Every biologist, geneticist, linguist, and anthropologist on the planet would want to go to that valley. They would want samples, DNA swabs, blood tests, brain scans. They would want to record their language and map their social structure. The potential for knowledge would be almost infinite. We would learn not only about them, but about ourselves, about the evolutionary path we took, and the one we didn't. We would finally have a true baseline for comparison, a control group for the experiment of being human. But right behind that scientific curiosity, a massive ethical wall would rise up. and it would be insurmountable. These are not lab rats. They are not a species of butterfly we just discovered. They are people, or are they? That would be the first terrible question. Are they legally human? Our entire legal framework, our entire concept of human rights is based on the idea that every human is a Homo sapiens. What happens when we find a human that isn't? Do they get a passport? Are they citizens of the country where they were found? In Russia, in our example. Do they have a right to privacy, a right to refuse to be studied? A team of lawyers would have a field day. One side would argue that the definition of human, in a legal sense, must be expanded to include them. They are self-aware. They have families, they have culture, they are obviously persons. They deserve every right and protection we give to ourselves. But another side would argue, perhaps coldly, that they are, by definition, not Homo sapiens. They are a separate species, and just as we study chimpanzees or gorillas, we have a right to study them. They might argue that the potential benefit for all of humanity, cures for diseases, a deeper understanding of our own biology outweighs the rights of a dozen individuals. They would be designated as a special protected species, but one that could be studied, perhaps even in captivity, for the greater good. This debate wouldn't happen in a quiet courtroom, it would happen on every television screen in the world. The media frenzy would be unimaginable. Helicopters would fly over the valley. A paparazzi with long lenses would try to get a photo. A photo of a Neanderthal child would be worth millions. Every news network would have 24/7 coverage. The lost tribe, not alone. Eve's other children. The headlines would write themselves, and with the media would come the exploiters. Imagine the reality show proposals, Neanderthal Island. Imagine the corporations wanting to sequence their genome, not for pure science, but to patent specific genes related to their immune system or metabolism. Imagine the military interest, a human with superior cold resistance and a different pain threshold. Every government would want to understand that. Religious groups would be thrown into chaos. For some, this would be a confirmation of forgotten stories of giants or wild men from their holy books. For others, it would be a profound challenge to creation stories centered solely on Homo sapiens. It would complicate the idea of the soul, of what it means to be made in God's image. Is there a Neanderthal soul? And then there is the most basic problem of all disease. Our world is saturated with germs that they have absolutely no immunity to. A common cold could wipe out their entire population. The flu could be a death sentence. To make contact would be to risk their extinction, the very thing we thought already happened. So, what would we do? The only ethical choice seems to be to leave them alone. To declare the valley a protected zone. No fly, no entry, guarded by the military. To watch them only with distant hidden cameras. To study them from afar without ever making contact. But could we really do that? Could humanity, with its insatiable curiosity and greed, really resist? Someone would eventually break quarantine. A rogue scientist, a greedy journalist, a misguided tourist. And the damage would be done. Let's say we did manage to protect them. Let's say we set up a perfect sanctuary. We create a team of ethical specialists. We decide to make limited, careful contact. We send in 1 or 2 people after months of quarantine to learn and to help. What would that first contact be like? Forget the science for a moment. Think of the human reality. You walk into their camp. You look different. You are taller, thinner. You carry strange things. They are looking at you. They are seeing a ghost. They are seeing a creature from a different world. They are seeing one of the others, the slender people who, in their distant ancestral memory, may have replaced them across the rest of the globe. Is there fear, curiosity, hostility? And what do you show them? An iPhone? A piece of chocolate? How do you explain your world to them? A world of 7 billion people, of cities, of cars, of the internet. Their entire existence is this small valley. Their universe is a few square miles. To show them our world would be to shatter theirs. It would be an act of profound psychological violence. Their knowledge, their skills, their entire way of life is perfectly adapted to that valley. But in our world, they would be helpless. They would be curiosities, freaks. They would be put in a special home, a sort of reserve, where they would be cared for, but where they would have no real agency. Their skills at hunting and tracking would be useless. Their deep knowledge of their land would be irrelevant. They would be completely dependent on us. It would be a prison, no matter how comfortable we made it. The discovery would turn them into living artifacts, and it would turn us into zookeepers. Or, worse, colonial masters. We have a very bad track record as a species of how we treat newly discovered groups of people. We have a history of exploitation, disease, and cultural destruction. Why would this time be any different? We would tell ourselves we were doing it for their own good, that we were protecting them. but we would still be in control. Their destiny would no longer be in their hands. The discovery of a living Neanderthal would force a deep and deeply uncomfortable look in the mirror. It would change our understanding of our own place in the universe. For all of history, we have been the only humans. We are the measure of all things. When we talk about human intelligence, we mean our intelligence. When we talk about human culture, we mean our culture. We are the protagonists of the story of this planet. We are evolution's great success. The Neanderthals would end that. Their existence would prove that we are not the sole definition of human. Wow, there was another way, another path. It would make us less special. It would mean that our dominance on this planet wasn't necessarily inevitable. It might have just been a matter of luck. Maybe we were better adapted to a changing climate. Because maybe we just had a higher birth rate. Maybe we were just more aggressive. Their presence would be a constant living reminder that we are not alone in our humanity. We are just one branch of a much more complex family tree. We are the last survivors of a world that was once populated by many different kinds of people. And we would have to confront the uncomfortable possibility that we are the reason they are the last of their kind. The reason they are confined to a single hidden valley, the guilt would be enormous. It would be a collective, species-wide guilt. We, Homo sapiens, expanded out of Africa and across the globe. And everywhere we went, the other hominins, Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo erectus disappeared. The timing is too perfect to be a coincidence. We either outcompeted them, absorbed them, or killed them. Or, most likely, a combination of all three. Now here they are. A tiny remnant of a world we erased. What is our responsibility to them? Is it to preserve them like a museum piece? Is it to try and integrate them knowing it would destroy their culture? There is no good answer. Every path is fraught with moral danger. The discovery would also teach us about our own nature. Not our biology, but our character. How would we react? With wonder and respect? Or with fear and exploitation? The cynic in me says the latter. The world would be divided. There would be Neanderthal rights movements. There would be humans first movements, arguing that they are a threat, or that resources spent on them should be spent on our own poor and sick. They would become a political symbol, a pawn in our own games. Some would see them as purer, more in touch with nature, a symbol of what we have lost. They would be romanticized. Others would see them as primitive, as lesser, as subhuman. They would be demonized. They would never be allowed to just be themselves. They would be a mirror, and everyone would see in them a reflection of their own hopes, fears, and prejudices. In the end, the greatest impact of discovering a living Neanderthal might not be what we learn about them, but what we learn about us. Their simple existence would ask us the most fundamental questions. What does it mean to be human? What is our responsibility to those who are different? Can we handle a discovery of this magnitude with wisdom and compassion? I suspect the answer to that last question would be no. The story would probably end in tragedy. Either we would accidentally destroy them with our diseases, or we would destroy them with our kindness. We would salve them into a life that had no meaning for them. We would turn them from a proud, self-sufficient people into a dependent, observed curiosity. The last Neanderthals would live out their lives in a golden cage, a living exhibit in the Human Museum. And their discovery would become a cautionary tale. A story we tell our children about how we found our long-lost cousins, and in our eagerness to know them, we smothered them. We would have gained an incredible amount of knowledge. We would have filled in the missing pages of our own evolutionary history. But we would have lost something far more valuable. We would have lost a second chance to get it right. Finding a living Neanderthal wouldn't be a simple scientific discovery. It would be a moral test. A final exam for our species, and based on our history, we would probably fail. The single greatest discovery in history would also be our single greatest shame. We would finally meet another kind of human, only to prove once and for all just how inhuman we can be. The valley would eventually be empty again, and we would be alone again. Only this time we would know for sure what we had lost. And we would know who was to blame.